What's going on YouTube? My name is Tony Doe. I am a physical therapist, and in this video I'm going to discuss, as you can see by the title, should you become a physical therapist? Is it worth it in this day and age, and how the current landscape of things are going? I've been working for 2.5 years at this point, and this type of video is one that I wish I had when I was an aspiring physical therapist, doing the research and applying for programs. So I hope that you find this useful. I'll be honest with you all, and if you have any questions afterwards, leave a comment below. I'd be happy to discuss. So of course, the first thing to look at is the job itself. Is being a physical therapist worth it? I would say 99% of physical therapists are going to say yes, it is rewarding and it is worth it. When you look at just the job itself, you're helping individuals get from their low points to a point where they want to be, or even beyond that. So you helping people, that in itself is very rewarding. You also speak with different types of people every single day. You learn a lot about people and different perspectives, and you see a lot of different avenues of life that you never would have thought about, right? I work in home health, so I've worked with many different types of individuals. I've worked with the man that's been on the moon. I've worked with executives of Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with men that built the spacecraft to get to the moon. You know, it's very unique, and just in that regard, it adds a whole nother layer to the job that you wouldn't even have thought of. But physical therapy itself, there are a lot of different avenues or ways that you can work. You're not confined to just one different setting. You know, you could do an outpatient setting where you're in a clinic most of the day seeing patients. If that's not your style, you can go to school, you can go to a rehab facility, hospital, home health, start your own business, become a medical sales rep. There's a lot of different ways, and that in itself is a pro to being a physical therapist. Is if you get sick of one setting or you realize it's not for you, you're not stuck. Now, if that's all you have to look at and consider, then yes, as a career, physical therapy is 100% worth it. If you don't have to pay for school, you don't even need to watch the rest of this video, because I'll tell you, it's worth it as a career. But 99.9% of us will have to accrue some form of debt, and that's where we have to have this conversation. Okay, so money. People don't like to talk about money. I've seen a lot of comments where individuals are saying, I didn't get into PT for money. Money doesn't matter. And I agree. Most of us probably didn't get into PT for money, but you need money to take care of yourself, your family, your future. Tuition is increasing at an astronomical rate. PT went from a bachelor to a doctorate, which is, an extra 3 years of your time and money. So in some form of thinking, money matters. And I'm someone that's very transparent about talking money, because I think the more information, more knowledge we have as a field, the better we can tackle this issue head on. So how much do physical therapists make? I have two sources here. The first one is from WebPT, and this is from 2020, I believe. I will link it below. The mean annual wage is $90,170, and the mean hourly wage is $43.35. The second statistic here is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it says the mean annual wage is $92,920, and the hourly wage is right under $45. So for simplicity, let's say somewhere between $90,000 to $92,000. That is a great annual mean wage, right? If that was all you had to factor in right there, that is more than the household income in the United States. But then you have to factor in the cost of entry, which we'll get to, and this is where this isn't so much worthy in terms of return on investment. But I feel like that range, $90,000 to $92,000, is a tad high. Even just thinking of 50 physical therapists that I know, I feel like that is a tad high. Now, that has gone up over the years, didn't keep up with inflation, and definitely not with the rate of the increase of tuition, but this has gone up over the years, thankfully. Now, reimbursement rates are decreasing year by year. There's always proposed cuts, and that's a battle that we as a field are having difficulty with currently. I know that many fields have their own battles, but this one right here, if a reimbursement keeps on declining, then this annual wage here is going to stay stagnant or decrease or increase at a very slow rate. Now, when it comes to starting wages, this is a different topic altogether, okay? I saw a post not too long ago where the student was saying their professors were saying, you can expect to start anywhere from 110 to 140. And I'm like, in what world is that the case? I would say, at least with my class, and I'd be pretty confident to say this as a broad statement, the vast majority of physical therapists start anywhere from 60 to 80, with the average being 68 to 72, I would say. Now, again, there are a lot of different settings and a lot of different ways you can get paid. So, like, for full transparency, for myself, I work in home health, and I started in home health, and I made more than the mean annual wage my first year out of school. So do your research there, but when it comes to how much physical therapists get paid, we get paid well, but not when you factor in the cost of school. This is where things take a turn, and this is where my recommendation automatically becomes guarded. The cost of entry is simply ridiculous, and it's going to keep going up, and it's astronomically higher than it used to be when it was a bachelor's and even a master's. Debt to income ratio is something you need to factor in, how much you owe versus how much you make. Around 1, I'd say is okay. Below 1 is ideal, and above 1 means that it's really not worth it when you think about it from a purely statistical standpoint and math standpoint. So PT, in this article, it says that over 70% of students come out of school with a debt to income ratio higher than 1. Let that sink in. Let's talk some numbers. So the average PT here for educational related debt comes out of school with $142,489. And just from PT related expenses alone, it's $116,183. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit and find the cost for school here. So the average public in-state program is $66,000. The average public out-of-state program is $112,000. And then private schools right around there. I'd honestly say it's even a little bit higher than that, but that's just for tuition and school-related costs. That's not for clinical costs. That's not for living costs. So think about it. 3 years, how much money do you need to live year by year for 3 years for traveling, for clinicals, all that? It adds up to an astronomical amount, right? Just think about that for a second there. So the cost of entry is ridiculous, and it makes my position here to recommend PT very guarded. Here are my recommendations. Of course, try to keep the program you choose as cheap as possible. Many of us, when we're applying to programs, we want to choose the most prestigious school and go to the best place possible, and understandably so, but at the end of the 3 years, you're going to have the same exact license as any other PT in the nation. Just let that sink in. So with that in mind, choose the cheapest program possible, and that's usually an in-state program. I would avoid private schools if possible. I know that it's very difficult to get into PT schools, so sometimes you don't really have a choice, but try to keep a program as cheap as possible. Now, living expenses. Most of us aren't going to want to live at home, but if that's an option for you where you don't have to pay rent, that's going to save you a ton of money over the 2 or 3 years, depending on if you travel for clinicals or not. Try to live at home if possible. I would also recommend you potentially, if you want, work a part-time job. The difficulty here is that most programs recommend you work less than 20 hours or so. Some programs even 10 to 12, just due to how rigorous the program is. But maybe pick up a small part-time job just to help with some living expenses. But overall, you want to choose a program that is cheap and try to minimize your living expenses the best that you can. As far as PTs that are already currently working, what I recommend is that you choose a field that pays better. Let's face it, right? Things like home health isn't as ideal or as attractive at the face value. But as a home health physical therapist, I love this, and I would never go back to the outpatient or a different setting. But home health pays quite a bit better. It reimburses better. You could also do cash pay if you would prefer to stick into more like a orthopedic type setting, or go into travel. Those 3 settings typically pay quite a bit better than the standard outpatient, SNF, things like that. But that's what I would recommend, or pick up a PRN or something like that. But ultimately, my recommendation for PT is guarded. If you don't need to accrue debt or much debt at all, the recommendation is very high. If you need to accrue average debt, then that's a factor to consider. You can weigh that out yourselves. But if you have to go into a debt to income ratio of more than 1, which most of us will, the recommendation is very guarded, and I would say that even other medical fields are better than PT in terms of debt to income ratio. So that's the video, guys. I hope that I didn't sway your opinion too negatively for PT. It is a great field, but you have to factor these things in. Otherwise, in 10 years, you're going to have some regrets. But ultimately, PT is an amazing field. You change lives, it pays well, but the cost of entry simply just makes things a lot more difficult and guarded for me to recommend. So any questions, again, leave them below. Let's discuss. I appreciate you all watching. We'll see you all in the next video. Peace.